Does Canada's electoral system work for you?
No. The first past the post makes no sense. I think we should have something other than that, some sort of weighted system where individual candidates and ridings have to get more than 50% to win. But I'm going to say our system of government in Canada works well for us overall. I mean, we've got a great country, it's safe, there's no violence compared to other places and so forth. So that's great. So I guess it is working from that sense. But I say no because it doesn't make sense that just because someone has 30% of the votes, they win everything in the area. So we have to either get them to work towards 51% or some sort of proportional representation, something else.
When we look at how many votes the Conservatives won, for example, and them not being in power, it just raises further questions if it worked or not. So for me it didn't, but maybe for others it did.
Well, right now, from what I understand, there are a disproportionate number of seats. I understand Quebec have more seats. And watching the American system and the Canadian system, and we're starting to use terms like the popular vote, I wish that it would be explained to everybody how that actually works and how the numbers of seats work and what you have to do across Canada to get proper representation. I think that's something that's not really looked into enough and people don't understand it. And they don't teach you that in school, which they should.
I think there needs to be some reform in there because Mr. Trudeau won the last election, I think, with the lowest level of turnout ever in a Canadian election. And I think it's something, so well over 2/3 of voters did not vote for Liberals, and here he is sitting as Prime Minister. A lot of people scratch their heads around the world. There's other smarter countries, I think, that we can emulate. So change needs to happen, and you know, people who are benefiting now, of course, they don't want to change. They love the status quo. Why would you, if you're winning and you're benefiting, why would you want to change that?
There's so much population in the east, the west doesn't really get a vote.
Like we're from the west.
We're from the west. So we know who's won by the time they start adding us up.
Well, I'm not sure, because if the percentage is higher for a certain party and they are not representing us, is it good or bad? I don't know. When I see others, it doesn't seem better. So I think it's okay for us.
Okay, I prefer actual votes being tabulated to represent the actual belief or voting process of the whole of the system, in other words. So in other words, each vote tabulates to an actual representation to who gets elected as an MP, and furthermore, the leader of that party gets elected as leader of that party.
Seeing as though, I guess as I understand, the Conservative government got more votes, but then they didn't, right? Yeah. They got more votes, but then they still are not in power. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and
I know there's a whole bunch of I'm not 100% sure how everything works, but that just seems weird that, when one party gets more votes, they still don't win.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have the representative system that we have in Canada, where it's not based on popular vote. There's merit to that because you want to have people on the East Coast where there's less population to have a say in the way that things are run.
Right.
But it seems like you go west of Ontario and it's pretty well blue the whole way through. So it just seems like I don't know. There's not it seems like the views of say Saskatchewans and Albertans are underrepresented.
Well, I would say I have a lot of concerns about the way our political system works. In terms of, I don't feel that we've elected a party or a person who necessarily reflects the views and the voters' will across Canada. For example, BC and Alberta voters, our votes don't really count because how many seats there are in Ontario and the fact that the vote was basically decided before any of our votes were even counted.
No, I think we should go to that, is it representation? That I believe would give the true picture of what the population wants in Canada. I think it would be far more effective, far more efficient.
Better than any other that I can think of right now. Living in Western Canada, I do see that there are changes that have to be made. We're not represented. And that sucks. I don't know enough about politics or the system to say we should be doing this instead. I don't know
how to do that, but I know that something needs to be done so that Western Canada is represented by our federal government.
The East has the power, and the West kind of just sort of goes along with it. So I'd like to see more representation in the West, have a better, say for our own future in the country and that.
No system is perfect. Every system has its drawbacks. For instance, if we had some kind of representational system right now, the People's Party of Canada would have some seats, and that would make me very unhappy. I think that kind of system allows the fringe parties to have more of a voice, and I know this will upset some people, but I think we don't really need that. I'm a real supporter of, for one reason, not that I necessarily think the fringe parties are totally wrong, but they have a harder time to cooperate with others than some of the other parties do. So I'm looking for a parliament that is more about cooperation than conflict. And I think the fringe parties tend to be not oriented that way. So I'm happy with the system as it is, even though it's not perfect.